You have to go, ma'am, the single dad told the CEO, moments before he signed a $500 million deal. The words were soft but shook her entire world. You have to go, ma'am. In that shining boardroom high above the city, the powerful young CEO Elena Brooks froze. Just seconds before she was about to sign a $500 million deal that would change her life, she heard a familiar voice, one she thought she'd never hear again. It was Liam Carter, once her company's engineer, now standing before her in a security uniform. Years ago, when Elena was climbing the corporate ladder, Liam had entered her life like quiet sunlight. A single dad with a little daughter named Sophie, he was humble, kind, and full of truth, everything Elena's cold, competitive world lacked. They met by chance when the office elevator broke down. His calm voice, "Are you all right, ma'am?" had somehow reached a place in her heart she never knew existed. Slowly, through brief talks, shared smiles, and late-night coffee runs, something real began to grow between them, but fate was cruel. When a scandal shook the company, blame fell on Liam's team. Elena, torn between her heart and her ambition, chose her career. She fired him, and his last words to her were, "One day you'll understand, not every win is worth it." Now, years later, that same man stood in front of her, warning her that the company's system had been hacked. "If you sign now, ma'am, everything will be stolen." Cameras were flashing, investors were waiting, and for a moment, the world demanded her to act strong, but she looked into Liam's eyes and remembered what truth felt like. She closed the file, stopping the deal. Minutes later, the system crashed exactly as he said. He had saved her empire. That night, she found him outside the building, rain falling softly. "You shouldn't have helped me," she whispered. Liam smiled gently. "My daughter says good people stay good, even when the world isn't." Tears filled Elena's eyes. "I lost you once for my success." He looked at her and said, "Maybe now you've finally won, not in business, but in heart." Months later, they worked together again, not just as colleagues, but as two souls who had found their way back. And sometimes, when they stood by the glass window watching the city lights, Elena would softly say, "That day when you said I had to go, maybe you were right. I had to lose myself to find what really matters." Liam would smile and reply, "Sometimes we have to walk away, so we can return better. Because love never truly ends, it only waits for the right moment to begin again." Revolving hearts. "Daddy, when will Mom come back?" The single dad's silent promise. The morning sun slipped through the dusty window of a small apartment as little Sophie tugged at her father's sleeve, her innocent eyes full of questions no child should ever have to ask. "Daddy, when will Mom come back?" she whispered, holding her half-eaten cereal bowl. Liam Carter, a man who had once commanded boardrooms and led teams, now stood in the quiet rhythm of single fatherhood, his life revolving around one heartbeat, his daughter's. He smiled gently, hiding the ache behind his tired eyes, brushing her hair back as he said, "Soon, sweetheart. She's watching over us." He didn't tell her that Elena, the woman who once changed everything, had left to rebuild her life, believing it was the only way to protect them from the chaos her company had created. Every day, Liam woke early, cooked breakfast, packed Sophie's school lunch, and then worked double shifts just to make sure her small world never felt empty. He told her stories at night, stories where princesses never cried and fathers were heroes. But deep inside, he feared she would one day see the cracks behind his smile. Months passed, seasons changed, and Sophie grew more like her mother, fierce yet kind, curious yet calm. Then one rainy evening, as Liam fixed a leaky window, a soft knock came at the door. When he opened it, he froze. Standing there, soaked in rain, was Elena, holding a small teddy bear. She looked at him, tears trembling in her eyes, whispering, "I didn't come for forgiveness. I came for her." Sophie peeked from behind her father, gasping, "Mom?" The world seemed to stop. Elena knelt down, hugging her daughter tightly, whispering, "I missed every bedtime story, but I never stopped loving you." Liam stood silently, torn between pain and relief, watching two pieces of his heart fit back together. Later that night, as Sophie slept between them, Elena turned to Liam and said, "I thought success meant money and power, but it was this, a home." Liam smiled faintly, his voice breaking, "You don't need to say sorry. Just stay." Outside, the rain stopped, and the city lights shimmered like quiet blessings. The next morning, Sophie woke up between both her parents, smiling brighter than the sun. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, full of second chances, quiet forgiveness, and love that had waited patiently through every storm. And as Liam whispered, "Good morning, my world," he knew that sometimes miracles don't arrive with noise, they come back home, holding a teddy bear in the rain. Revolving hearts. The office was silent, too silent. He sat behind the desk, hands gripping the papers in front of him, and she stood tall, strong, unshaken, like a storm refusing to calm. "Close the door," she said. He hesitated. "Why?" "Because what I'm about to say," she replied, "doesn't deserve an audience." Her voice was steady, but her eyes, they burned with everything she'd held back for years. "You took my work, my ideas, and you called them yours," she began. "You said I wasn't ready for leadership, you said I lacked experience. But tell me something, Mr. Davis," she leaned forward slightly, "when you made mistakes, who cleaned them up?" He swallowed hard, eyes flickering with guilt. "I did what I thought was best for the company." She laughed, cold, sharp, bitter. "I know. You did what was best for you." He rose from his chair, voice shaking with authority he no longer believed in. "You don't talk to me like that, young lady." She stepped closer, her heels striking the floor like thunder. "I just did." He froze. "All these years," she said, "I stayed quiet because I respected you, because I believed loyalty meant silence, but silence has a price, and I'm done paying it." She pulled a file from her bag and placed it on his desk. "Every report. Every decision. Every lie. You built your empire on my name, but from today, that ends." He looked at the folder, and for the first time, he looked afraid. "You'll regret this," he whispered. She smiled, not kindly, but with the calm of someone finally free. "I already did," she said, "but not anymore." She turned toward the door, sunlight catching her face as she walked away, and in that moment, he realized she wasn't the same woman he could control. She was stronger, louder, unstoppable. The rain poured down like the sky was trying to wash away every sin of the city. It was past midnight when Ethan heard the knock, faint at first, then louder, desperate. He opened the door, and there she was. Lena. Soaked from head to toe, her eyes trembling as she clutched an old teddy bear, the same one he had given her years ago on their first anniversary. For a moment, time stood still. The sound of the rain faded, replaced by the silence of two broken hearts staring at what they once had. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "Lena," he whispered, unable to believe she was real. She nodded, her lips quivering, tears mixing with the raindrops on her face. "I had nowhere else to go," she said softly, holding the teddy tighter as if it was her last piece of safety. Ethan's chest tightened. Memories came rushing back, the laughter, the fights, the way she used to wait for him with coffee every morning. The night she left, she'd said she needed freedom. Now, standing in his doorway, she looked like someone who had lost everything in the name of it. "You shouldn't be here," he said, though his voice betrayed the pain behind his words. "I know," she whispered, "but I didn't know where else I belonged." For a moment, neither moved. The storm raged behind her, but inside, something else stirred, something fragile, something that had never really died. He stepped aside without another word. She hesitated, then slowly walked in, leaving a trail of water and shattered pride behind her. The teddy bear fell slightly loose from her arms, and he bent down to pick it up. When their fingers touched, both froze. It felt like years of distance melted in one heartbeat. "I kept it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I thought one day I'd find my way back." Ethan looked at her, eyes wet, and said the words he had buried deep for too long, "You already have." And as the door closed behind them, the rain kept falling outside, but inside, two souls finally stopped running from the storm. Broken heart cloud with rain. The rain had finally stopped, but inside the small house, hearts were still heavy with years of silence. Lena knelt down as soon as she saw her daughter, her knees hitting the floor, her breath trembling as if the weight of the world had been lifted and crushed all at once. The little girl, Emma, stood there in her tiny red coat, clutching the same teddy bear her mother had left behind the night she walked away. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Emma ran forward, her small arms wrapping tightly around Lena's neck. The world seemed to disappear, the years apart, the tears, the regrets, all drowned in the sound of a child's heartbeat. Lena broke down completely, whispering through her sobs, "I'm so sorry, baby. Mommy's here now. I'll never leave again." Behind them, Ethan, the man who had once been her husband, watched quietly. There was no anger left in his eyes, only a deep sadness mixed with something softer, maybe forgiveness. He had raised Emma alone, never letting her forget her mother's face, even when his heart told him to. Watching them now, he realized something: sometimes love doesn't end, it just gets lost for a while. As Lena held her daughter tighter, she finally looked up at Ethan. Her eyes said everything: "Thank you for not letting her forget me." He nodded, his throat too tight to speak, and simply smiled. The rain outside began again, soft and steady, but this time it didn't sound like sorrow, it sounded like peace. For the first time in years, their home wasn't broken anymore. It was whole. Red heart. That night, for the first time in years, there was silence in the house, not the heavy kind that came from loneliness, but the peaceful kind that wrapped around hearts like a warm blanket. Ethan, Lena, and little Emma sat together on the old couch that had once seen so many lonely nights. Now, it felt like a part of a family again. The soft light from the lamp filled the room with gold, reflecting on the framed pictures of what once was, and what had finally come back. Emma, tired from crying and laughing, had fallen asleep in her father's arms, her small head resting against his chest. Lena watched her daughter, her eyes full of quiet tears, but this time, they were tears of peace. She gently brushed a lock of hair from Emma's face and whispered, "She sleeps just like you." Ethan smiled faintly, looking at her with a softness that only time and forgiveness could bring. "She missed you every night," he said quietly. "I did too." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The pain between them didn't vanish, but it faded, like a scar that no longer hurts. Lena leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, and he didn't move away. The rain outside had stopped completely, and only the sound of Emma's slow breathing filled the room. It was a small thing, a quiet night, a dim lamp, a sleeping child, but for them, it was everything. After all the storms, they had finally found home again. Red heart. The morning sun poured through the glass walls, but the air inside was cold, filled with tension. Emma stood with her hands on her hips, staring straight at Mr. Harris, the man who once controlled every word she spoke. He leaned back in his chair, calm on the outside, but his eyes showed something else: fear. "Is this how you talk to your boss?" he asked. Emma's voice was sharp, steady. "No, Mr. Harris. This is how I talk to someone who lost the right to be one." He frowned, tapping the desk. "You think you can run this company better than me?" She stepped closer, her heels clicking like thunder. "I don't think, sir." "I know. Because while you were busy building your empire, I was busy saving it." He tried to speak, but she cut him off. "You taught me everything about power. But you forgot to teach me fear. And that's where you lost." The room went silent. Even the city outside seemed to hold its breath. Emma leaned forward. "Today, I'm not asking for respect, Mr. Harris. I'm taking it." She placed a file on his desk, her new leadership proposal, and turned to leave. Mr. Harris whispered behind her, almost to himself, "She's become what I never could." Without turning back, Emma said, "No, Mr. Harris. I became what you never let me be." The door closed, and for the first time, the boss realized the power had changed hands. The world outside was painted in gold as autumn leaves danced through the crisp morning air. Ethan held Lena's hand, their fingers intertwined as if they were never meant to let go again, while little Emma skipped joyfully between them, clutching her worn-out teddy bear. The same teddy that had once been soaked in tears was now bouncing with laughter. The park was alive, children playing, birds singing, the sunlight filtering through trees, but for them, it felt like the whole world had slowed down just to let this moment last. Emma looked up at her parents, her bright eyes sparkling as she said, "This is the best day ever." Ethan smiled, watching her small boots crunch against fallen leaves, and replied softly, "Every day with you is the best day." Lena looked at them both, her heart swelling with gratitude. There had been nights when she thought happiness like this would never come back. Now, as the three of them walked under the golden canopy, love felt simple again, not perfect, but real. No boardrooms, no contracts, no pride, just family, hand in hand, walking forward together. The wind brushed past them, carrying away the last pieces of their past, and in its place, it left something pure, a promise that no matter what seasons may come, they would face them side by side. Red heart.